All right, it's here, finally. The fuel pressure reg, the part that's missing from the current fuel system I'm building. Budget, obviously, PQY. You'd know the brand. Straight from eBay, straight from China. Let's talk about the fuel pressure reg itself, these budget ones anyway, and what you need to do when you first get it. So the first thing obviously is to check it for damage, because you don't want to be fitting one of these that's damaged. They will come with a bung screwed in them occasionally, which is there, and these fittings will just be tossed in the box getting all scratched up and stuff, but it is budget, you get what you pay for. I chose this one because it does have 10 AN fittings. You can see they're pretty decent, the threads, pretty good finish. I want 10 AN just peace of mind, I guess. I'll run a 8 AN fitting in there, 10 AN return to the tank. This one I won't use in this case. So expect the body for damage, obviously. That's everybody should do it anyway. But there is something we need to do, and that is to pull this thing apart. You can see there already, if you can see in there, there's some damage. Not damage, but some marks from the tool maybe. And over here as well. And no doubt we're probably going to find some bits of alloy inside it around the diaphragm. Now the diaphragm is only rubber. You don't want it to get damaged by any of that debris. You don't want any of that debris to go into your fuel system either, into your fuel pump, into your filters even. Now you're going to want to clamp this because there is a spring in here. It's going to be forcing up, and it's likely to damage these threads when you undo it. So put in a vise, use a clamp like this, whatever other method to keep some pressure on the top, and so you undo those socketed cap screws there. Alright, so you want to be careful not to rip this when you lift it up. Just want to go around and roll that back. Alright, so what we're looking for is debris anywhere in here really. There's not usually going to be anything up here. We'll still check anyway. Most of it's going to be in here, and you can already see. Nice big chunk right there. It's definitely a bit of alloy. Pretty sharp. So what we want to do is remove as much of that loose alloy you can see there, anything floating around. We want to get rid of all that. So anything in here, see those sharp edges. On the other side as well. Like I said before, I think that's from the tool that cut the thread, maybe. So we want to clean it up. We don't want to scratch it too much. We just want to literally break away the bits of casting nuts or bits of alloy that's been machined out of there. Alright, so we've checked all those parts there, cleaned up that bottom of the fuel pressure reg. And then if we have a look at the diaphragm, you can see there's a fair bit of metal shavings even on the surface where it seals. So that really needs to be clean, very clean, because that's the piece that sandwiches between the bottom and the top of the fuel pressure reg. It separates obviously vacuum air from fuel, which is in the bottom of the reg. So we're going to need to give that a good clean. Or just wipe it down with a cloth. Right, you see all those metal shavings even on the back here, trapped in here. We want to get rid of all that debris. Now if you have a look at that and what it actually does, and you saw that bit of metal that was on there, that is the ball or seal that you can see on the back, which is the return line. So this is a return to tank. You can see that there. That's the part that seals and stops the fuel returning back to the tank. So you really want to make sure that's nice and clean on both surfaces. While you got this apart, if you know what fittings go where you're going to use this, what position you're going to use it in, I should say, I'd probably advise putting the fittings you're going to use in now. I use some non-hardening sealant on the threads just to be sure. You can use whatever you want, obviously not thread tape. That way you can see if there is any debris from the thread that goes in there as well, just to be 100% sure. Now you probably don't have to put anything on there. The O-ring obviously is meant to seal it, but just to be sure, put a little bit of thread sealant on there. And you can, like I said, you can double check now that you haven't pushed any more debris into that threaded part or back out into the bottom of the fuel reg. Now, even though I chose a fuel pressure reg that had 10 AN fittings, I am using one 8 AN fitting for the rail, which will return to the reg through this 8 AN fitting. I mainly got it for the 10 AN return. So 10 AN return back to tank. Here's a little something. 10 AN fitting, 10 AN fitting. This is the one that came with the reg. I haven't had that before, but you know, it happens. I don't know what that is. It's not 10 AN. It's 10 AN on the outside, see? But not on the inside. So it'd kind of be pointless, defeat the purpose. That's smaller than that 8 AN fitting on the inside. So we make sure you got a proper 10 AN fitting, and that is going to be our return back to tank. Talk about a bit more about why I'm using 10 AN return later on. We'll talk about the rest of the fuel system and have a look at it. And you can use your tool, whatever you might use, to crank those up nice and tight. And again, just check if we haven't pushed anything back into the reg. So this one we'll have to leave off for now, because we've got to put it back together the way it was. Trying to line those back up, make sure you don't pinch the diaphragm. That's your spring. That's the flat washer that goes on top, which, oh, sorry, there we go. So that's your adjuster, pushes down on the spring like that, obviously through the top of the reg. So what we want to do now is get it back in that position we had it before, and clamp it back down. You can use a little bit of lubricant. I find it's pretty good for threads and everything. Just use olive oil. Just gonna put a little bit in there. The adjuster. Okay, so that's about all you need to do to get your budget reg up to spec. Now, you don't, I mean, a lot of people have said you don't have to do it. I've heard people say they don't do it, and I've gotten away with not cleaning it out before because most of it's going to end up back in your tank anyway. And there's lots of crap in most people's fuel tanks, but it's better to get rid of it just in case it does damage any part of the internal parts workings of the regulator, or it does get stuck in that valve where the ball is on top of the body of the reg, because that can be inconvenient, cause you some issues. Fuel can just keep leaking past, right? You're not going to build fuel pressure. If you're just using this by itself, you probably need to get a better one. Some of them I have had that don't read 100% correct. Again, you know, some of them might. What's a few PSI, right? So let's talk about why I went with this one anyway, and that was, as I touched on a little earlier, is a 10 AM return. I like to run the big return on a street car. And even though it has a big 10 AM port I could have used, I'd reduce that one down to 8 AM, which is what the return from the rack. But I'll do another video on fitting this and show you the rest of the fuel system. Oh, hope that gets you out of trouble with your budget fuel pressure reg.